The massive alien ship hovered over New York, its metallic surface reflecting the morning sun. Below, in the United Nations Assembly Hall, Earth's representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats as the tall, silver-skinned ambassador of the Stellar Empire made his announcement. "We bring you a gift," the ambassador said, his voice cold and formal. "Lady Rose of the First House will remain on Earth as a symbol of our goodwill." At the back of the hall, Rose stood quietly, her pale silver skin markedly different from her people's usual brilliant sheen. She kept her eyes down, knowing what came next in these situations: the whispers, the looks of disgust, the realization that she was broken. Unlike the rest of her kind, Rose couldn't read minds or move objects with thoughts. She was, as her father often said, as useful as a ship without engines. Now, at 25 years old, she had become a convenient way for the Empire to insult humanity while pretending to offer friendship. The human delegates weren't fooled. General Williams, Earth's chief negotiator, stood up slowly. "You're giving us one of your nobles?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "That's unexpected." "She is yours now," the ambassador said, already turning to leave. "Do with her what you will." Rose watched her people depart without a backward glance. The great ship rose into the sky minutes later, leaving her alone among billions of humans who had every reason to hate her kind. The first week was the hardest. The United Nations put her in a comfortable apartment in New York, but comfort didn't equal belonging. The guards outside her door were officially for her protection, but Rose knew better. Humans didn't trust her, and why should they? Her own people had thrown her away. Everything on Earth felt different. The gravity was slightly stronger, making her movements awkward. The air was thicker, richer in oxygen than she was used to. Even the colors seemed wrong. Earth used warm yellows for lighting instead of the cool blues of home. But slowly, surprisingly, Rose began to notice beautiful things. Human music was nothing like the mathematical precision of imperial compositions. It was wild, emotional, and somehow perfect in its imperfection. She found herself spending hours listening to everything from classical orchestras to street musicians playing in the park below her window. 1 month after her arrival, Dr. Lisa Parker from the Human-Alien Relations Committee came to visit. The older woman brought something called coffee and actually sat down to talk with Rose instead of just studying her. "You know," Lisa said, watching Rose carefully, "most of us figured out this was meant as an insult. Giving Earth a defective noble and all that." She took a sip of her coffee. "But some of us wonder if your people made a mistake." Rose looked up, surprised. "A mistake?" "Well, they clearly think you're worthless because you can't do what they do. But has anyone ever tested you to see if you might be able to do something else? Something they can't?" The question stunned Rose. In all her years, no one had ever suggested such a thing. In the Empire, you either had the power or you didn't. There were no alternatives. I don't know," she admitted. Lisa smiled. "Would you like to find out? We got some researchers who'd love to work with you. Real research, not just poking and prodding. Only if you want to, of course." For the first time since arriving on Earth, Rose felt something new: hope. These humans, these supposedly primitive beings her people looked down on, were willing to look past what she couldn't do and search for what she could. "Yes," Rose said, her voice stronger than it had been in years. "Yes, I would like that very much." As she followed Lisa out of the apartment that day, Rose realized something had changed. The guards nodded to her instead of watching her suspiciously. The sun felt warmer. Even the gravity seemed less challenging. She might have been sent to Earth as an insult, but perhaps, just perhaps, she had been sent here for a greater purpose. One that neither her people nor humanity could yet imagine. The research facility buzzed with excitement. For 3 months, Rose had undergone every test the scientists could think of. Today was different. The machines were picking up strange readings whenever she was near them. "There it is again." Dr. James Miller pointed at his screen, where waves of electromagnetic activity spiked and fell. "Rose, Are you feeling anything when this happens? Rose stood in the center of the lab, surrounded by equipment. Her silver skin had taken on a subtle glow that the machines couldn't quite explain. It's like a tingle, she said. When I focus, I can feel the machines around me. Not like reading thoughts, but something else. James moved closer, his dark eyes bright with interest. Unlike the other scientists, he always spoke directly to her instead of about her. Try to focus on just one machine. Maybe the computer in front of you. Tell me what you feel. Rose closed her eyes. The world changed behind her eyelids. She could sense the flow of electricity, the magnetic fields, the dance of electrons. It was beautiful, like seeing music or hearing colors. Without thinking, she reached out with her mind. The computer screen flickered. That's impossible, one of the other scientists whispered. The computer had turned on without anyone touching it. James stepped forward. Rose, can you do it again? But this time, keep your eyes open and tell us what you're doing. She nodded, concentrating on the feeling. The tingle became stronger, like static electricity under her skin. This time, she didn't just sense the fields. She pushed at them, guided them, shaped them. The lights in the lab dimmed. Then, one by one, every machine in the room turned on. Electromagnetic manipulation, James breathed. You're not psychic like your people. You're something completely new. Over the next few weeks, Rose learned to control her ability. She could turn devices on and off, redirect electrical currents, and even sense the tiny electromagnetic fields produced by human hearts. It was nothing like the mental powers her people valued, but it was hers. James spent more and more time helping her train. He brought in different devices for her to practice with, celebrated every small success, and never once treated her like she was broken or strange. Your people were wrong about you, he told her one evening as they sat in the lab, surrounded by machines she had learned to control. They were so focused on what they thought power should look like, they missed something amazing. Rose looked at her hands, watching the subtle shimmer that appeared when she used her ability. I still don't understand why I'm different. Maybe you're not different, James suggested. Maybe you're next. Evolution doesn't always move in the direction we expect. Before Rose could respond, alarms blared throughout the facility. Emergency lights flashed red, and security teams rushed past the lab doors. What's happening? Rose asked, standing up. James checked his phone, his face growing serious. Your people, they're back. Through her new awareness, Rose could feel the massive electromagnetic disturbance of an Imperial ship entering Earth's atmosphere. But this time, something was different. She could sense the ship's systems, its power core, its communication arrays, all of it humming with energy she could now touch. They know, she whispered. They must have detected my abilities in their scans. That's why they're back. James moved to stand beside her, his presence steady and reassuring. What do you want to do? Rose straightened her shoulders. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel powerless. She wasn't the broken noble they had thrown away. She was something new, something that could bridge the gap between two worlds. I want to show them, she said firmly. Show them that different doesn't mean worthless. That power comes in many forms. As the facility erupted into chaos around them, Rose and James headed for the main entrance. She could feel the Imperial ship getting closer, its energy signature like a storm in her mind. This time, she would face her people as an equal, not as a gift to be discarded. The Imperial ambassador stood in the same United Nations hall where he had left Rose months ago. This time, his silver face showed something new. Fear. She must return with us immediately, he demanded. Lady Rose is property of the Empire. General Williams, who had once received Rose as an unwanted gift, now stood protectively in front of her. Lady Rose has requested asylum on Earth. She is under our protection. Rose could feel the electromagnetic pulses from the ambassador's personal shield, from the communication devices hidden in his robes, from every piece of technology in the room. Next to her, James watched the Imperial delegation with careful eyes. She is an evolutionary anomaly. the ambassador said. Her abilities must be studied by Imperial scientists. You mean the abilities you ignored for 25 years? James stepped forward, holding up a datapad. We've done the genetic analysis. Rose isn't defective. She's advanced. Her electromagnetic powers are the next step in your species' evolution. The ambassador's face twitched. That is impossible. Rose raised her hand, and every screen in the hall lit up with data. Her test results, genetic maps, power readings. She had learned enough control now to make the displays dance with information. I am not broken, she said, her voice carrying across the silent room. I am different, and I choose to stay on Earth. The ambassador's guard stepped forward, their weapons humming with power that Rose could feel in her bones. Without thinking, she reached out with her ability. The weapons went dead in their hands. Gasps filled the room. The guards looked at their useless weapons in shock. The ambassador's shield flickered and died. How dare you? He sputtered. This is an act of war. No, Rose said calmly, restoring power to their devices. This is a demonstration. I could have left those weapons dead. I could have shut down your ship in orbit. Instead, I'm showing you that power comes in many forms. James moved to stand beside her. Rose's abilities could bridge our technologies. Think of what we could learn from each other. The ambassador's face showed a mix of emotions: fear, greed, calculation. The Empire will not accept this defiance. The Empire sent me here as trash, Rose said. You can't take back a gift just because it turned out to be valuable. General Williams nodded. Earth has granted Lady Rose full citizenship. Any attempt to take her by force will be considered an act of war. The tension in the room grew thick. Rose could feel the electromagnetic fields shifting as people moved, as hearts beat faster, as weapons stayed ready but silent. Then another Imperial officer stepped forward, older, with wisdom lines around his eyes. Ambassador, he said quietly, perhaps we should consider the larger implications. If Lady Rose's abilities represent evolutionary advancement, there may be others among our people with similar untested powers. The ambassador froze. Rose could almost see him thinking about the possibilities, about how this knowledge could affect his position back home. He said slowly, we will need time to consult with the Imperial Council. Take all the time you need, General Williams replied. Lady Rose stays here until she chooses otherwise. As the Imperial delegation left the hall, James turned to Rose. Are you okay? Rose looked at her hands, still tingling with power. I never dreamed of standing up to them like that. Of being strong. You were always strong, James said softly. You just needed a chance to show it. But even as the immediate crisis passed, Rose felt something new stirring inside her. Her powers were growing stronger every day. And there was something else. Something changing in her body that she couldn't quite understand. She looked at James, remembering all the hours they'd spent together in the lab. All the moments when he believed in her, even when she hadn't believed in herself. James, she said quietly, I need to tell you something. I think I'm changing again. The next evolution had already begun, but neither of them could guess just how far it would go. The medical bay was silent except for the gentle hum of machines. Rose lay on the examination table, her silver skin glowing softly while Dr. Lisa Parker studied the readings with wide eyes. This is unprecedented, Lisa whispered, looking at the scan results. Rose, you're pregnant. James, who had been holding Rose's hand, nearly fell over. But that's impossible. Our species are completely different. Rose placed her free hand on her stomach. Through her electromagnetic sense, she could feel the tiny flutter of a new life, pulsing with both electrical and psychic energy. Not impossible, she said softly. Different. The news spread quickly. Within hours, the Imperial ship in orbit sent down an urgent message. The ambassador demanded an emergency meeting. This time, when they gathered in the UN hall, Rose sat at the main table instead of standing in the back. James sat beside her, still looking stunned but protective. "This abomination cannot be allowed to continue," the ambassador declared. "The child must be terminated." "The child will be born," Rose said, her voice carrying an authority she'd never had before. Around them, every electronic device pulsed in sync with her words. "It is mine, and Earth has promised to protect both of us." The ambassador slammed his hand on the table. "You don't understand. The mixing of our species could destroy everything. Our genetic purity is a myth," Lisa interrupted, stepping forward with her medical data. "The scan shows something remarkable. The child carries the best of both species. It has the potential for both psychic abilities and electromagnetic manipulation. This isn't destruction. It's advancement." Rose could feel the truth of it. The life growing inside her buzzed with energy unlike anything she'd ever sensed. Sometimes, in quiet moments, she could even feel tiny thoughts brushing against her mind, something she'd never been able to do before. "The Empire will not stand for this," the ambassador threatened. "We will take action." General Williams stood up. "Try it. Earth's entire defense network has been modified using Rose's understanding of electromagnetic fields. Your weapons won't work here anymore." The ambassador's face turned almost white. "You gave them our technological secrets." "No," Rose said. "I helped them develop their own path, just as this child will find its own way." James finally spoke up. "The child will be born in 7 months. It will be the first of its kind, a bridge between our peoples. You can either accept this new future or fight against it. But know that if you choose to fight, you'll lose more than just a war." The older Imperial officer from the previous meeting stepped forward again. "Ambassador, news of this pregnancy has already reached the Empire. Many of our people are intrigued, not disgusted. They see it as proof that we can adapt, evolve. Perhaps we should observe rather than intervene." Rose could sense the shift in the room's energy. The ambassador's threats had no power here. This child, her child, would change everything. "I know you're scared," she told her former people. "Change is always frightening. But this baby is a gift. A real one, not like when you tried to throw me away. It's proof that differences can create something beautiful." The meeting ended in an uneasy truce. The Empire would watch and wait, neither accepting nor attacking. It was more than Rose had hoped for. That night, in their apartment overlooking the city, James held Rose close. "Are you afraid?" he asked. Rose placed their joined hands over her stomach, where their impossible child grew stronger each day. Through her powers, she could feel its heart beating, its energy pulsing with both human and imperial patterns. "No," she said. "For the first time in my life, I know exactly where I belong." Above them, the stars twinkled with possibility, while inside her, the future grew one heartbeat at a time. The hospital room crackled with energy. Medical equipment sparked and flickered as Rose's powers surged with each contraction. James hadn't left her side for hours, even though the electromagnetic pulses made his hair stand on end. "Almost there," Dr. Lisa said, somehow managing to keep the electronic monitors working. "The baby's energy readings are off the charts." Rose could feel it, her child's combined powers growing stronger as birth approached. The lights in the room pulsed with each wave of pain. "Focus, Rose," James whispered, holding her hand. "You're doing amazing." Outside the hospital, crowds had gathered. Humans stood alongside a small group of Imperial observers who had been allowed to witness the historic birth. News cameras hovered at the permitted distance, their equipment struggling against the waves of energy rolling out from the building. With one final surge that briefly knocked out power to half the city, Rose gave birth to her daughter. The baby's first cry carried both sound and psychic force. Every person in a mile radius felt it, a wave of pure joy and welcome. The child's skin shimmered between human pink and imperial silver, settling into a pearl-like glow that seemed to shift with her moods. "She's perfect," James breathed, tears in his eyes as he held his daughter for the first time. Lisa checked the readings, shaking her head in amazement. Both power sets are present and stable. She's generating electromagnetic fields even stronger than Rose's, and there's definite psychic activity. Rose reached out, touching her daughter's cheek. The moment their skin met, the baby's thoughts flowed into her mind, clear, bright, and full of love. For the first time in her life, Rose could experience the mental connection her people valued so much. "Dawn," she whispered. "Her name is Dawn." The baby cooed, and all the lights in the room danced in response. Word spread quickly. The Imperial ship in orbit registered the massive energy spike. The ambassador himself requested permission to see the child. Hours later, after mother and baby had rested, a small Imperial delegation entered the room. The ambassador stopped short when he saw Dawn, his eyes wide with disbelief. The baby looked at him, and suddenly the ambassador staggered. She spoke to me," he said, his voice shaking. "Mentally. But she also. I can feel the energy she's generating." Dawn reached out toward the Imperial visitors, her skin shimmering. Every piece of technology in the room responded to her presence, while at the same time, the Imperial delegates felt her gentle mental touch. "She carries both gifts," Rose said proudly. "And something more, the ability to bridge our peoples in ways we never imagined." The older Imperial officer stepped forward, bowing slightly. "The child is blessed," he said. "She proves that evolution favors adaptation over purity. The Empire must reconsider many things." James held Rose's hand as they watched their daughter charm both humans and Imperials alike. Dawn's powers seemed to grow by the hour, but they weren't wild or dangerous. Even at just a few hours old, she showed remarkable control. "She's going to change everything," James said softly. Rose nodded. "She already has." Outside, the crowds had felt Dawn's mental welcome. Humans, and the few Imperial citizens on Earth, found themselves sharing feelings of hope and unity. News reports spoke of unprecedented cooperation between the species. As night fell, Rose held her daughter close, marveling at the perfect blend of two worlds she represented. Through their mental link, she felt Dawn's contentment, her curiosity, her pure love for both parents. The machines in the room hummed a gentle lullaby in response to Dawn's happiness. Above the hospital, the Imperial ship's lights pulsed in synchronization, a sign that even in orbit, Dawn's influence could be felt. "Sleep well, little one," Rose whispered. "Tomorrow is the first day of a new age." Dawn drifted off to sleep, her dreams touching everyone nearby with visions of a future where differences were celebrated, not feared. Dawn was 6 months old when the first delegation arrived from the outer colonies. They came in ships that darkened the sky, each claiming they had rights to study or influence the hybrid child. Rose could sense their true intentions through her daughter's growing powers. "They want to use her," Rose told James as they watched another ship enter orbit. "They think she's the key to forcing evolution in their own people." Dawn sat in her floating crib, which hovered using her natural electromagnetic abilities. She reached out, touching both parents' minds with feelings of reassurance. At just 6 months, she understood more than any child should. The Empire splitting into factions, General Williams reported during an emergency meeting. Half of them want to claim Dawn as their own. The others want to prevent any more human Imperial breeding. "They can't have her," James said firmly. He had developed new security systems based on Dawn's unique energy signature. No one could approach the family without both Dawn and Rose sensing them. The baby's abilities grew daily. She could now manipulate technology with more skill than Rose, while also displaying telepathic powers that surpassed most Imperial adults. But it was her newest ability that truly frightened their enemies. Dawn could enhance the latent abilities in others. "Watch," Rose said during a demonstration for Earth's leaders. She held Dawn while James stood nearby. The baby reached out, touching both parents' minds. Suddenly, Rose could communicate telepathically like any Imperial, while James developed temporary electromagnetic sensitivity. "She's not just a hybrid," Lisa explained to the astonished audience. She's a catalyst for human potential. The news caused chaos. More ships arrived. Some imperial nobles tried to kidnap human children, hoping to replicate Dawn's abilities. Others offered massive bribes to human governments for access to Dawn. Earth's nations, for the first time in history, stood completely united. They would protect the child who represented humanity's next step forward. No one touches her, the UN Council declared. Any attempt to take Dawn or her parents will be considered an act of war. The Imperial ships pressed closer. Dawn, sensing the tension, created a shield of combined electromagnetic and psychic energy around Earth's atmosphere. No ship could enter without her permission. She's too powerful, the ambassador warned during a tense meeting. No child should have such abilities. No child should have to defend herself from adults who want to use her, Rose countered. The room's technology pulsed with her anger. Dawn, sitting in James's arms, suddenly projected an image into everyone's minds. They saw a future where humans and Imperials worked together, where children like her weren't feared but celebrated, where power came in many forms, all of them valid. The ambassador stumbled back. How can she? She's just an infant. She's the future, James said proudly, and she's choosing it for herself. That night, as Dawn slept surrounded by her protective fields, Rose and James watched their daughter dream. Her powers touched nearby electronics, making them hum soft lullabies. They'll keep coming, James said softly. They'll never stop trying to control her. Rose nodded. But they don't understand. Dawn isn't just our child anymore. She's hope. She's proof that differences make us stronger. And Earth will always protect its own. In orbit, the Imperial ships continued their tense standoff. But on Earth, something remarkable was happening. More humans began showing signs of electromagnetic sensitivity. More Imperials discovered new forms of their traditional powers. Dawn slept peacefully, unaware that she had already changed both species forever. Her dreams touched the minds of those nearby, sharing her simple wisdom. Fear of change was natural, but fighting evolution was pointless. The political storm would continue, but Dawn's very existence had already won the most important battle. She had shown both species that the future belonged to those brave enough to embrace difference, and she was only beginning to grow. 5 years passed. Dawn grew into a child whose abilities amazed both humans and Imperials. Her pearl-like skin glowed as she sat in the Great Hall of the United Nations, now renamed the Interstellar Council. "The bridge is ready," she announced, her young voice carrying both sound and thought to everyone present. "I can help others cross it now." Rose and James watched proudly as their daughter demonstrated her greatest achievement yet. With a gentle touch, Dawn awakened latent abilities in both humans and Imperials. Not temporary enhancements anymore, but permanent evolutionary steps. "The changes must be voluntary," Dawn explained, showing wisdom beyond her years. "Everyone chooses their own path." The ambassador, now an ally thanks to Dawn's influence, stepped forward. "The Empire recognizes Dawn as the first bridge," he declared. "Through her, both our peoples grow stronger." Earth had changed dramatically in 5 years. Cities now pulsed with electromagnetic fields that powered everything cleanly. Humans and Imperials worked together, each bringing their unique strengths to solve old problems. "Remember when they wanted to take her away?" James whispered to Rose as they watched their daughter lead another awakening session. Rose nodded, squeezing his hand. Now they come to learn from her instead. Dawn had grown into her role naturally. She could switch between telepathic communication and electromagnetic manipulation effortlessly. But her greatest gift was helping others find their own hidden talents. "Everyone has something special inside them," Dawn often said. "Sometimes they just need help finding it." The old fears and prejudices faded as more children like Dawn were born, not quite as powerful, but each unique in their own way. Humanity and the Empire had truly begun to merge, creating something entirely new. Research centers studied the changes, amazed by how fast evolution could move when guided by understanding instead of fear. Dawn's existence had sparked a renaissance in both societies. "What do you see in our future?" the council asked Dawn during her final presentation. The child smiled, her skin shimmering with joy. Around her, electronics hummed in harmony while minds touched gently in shared vision. "I see us reaching the stars together," she said, "not as separate species, but as one people who celebrate their differences. The bridge I built is just the beginning." Rose, who had once been considered worthless by her people, now stood as Earth's chief ambassador to the Empire. Her defect had turned out to be the first sign of the change to come. James led the new Institute of Evolutionary Technologies, helping both species understand their growing abilities. His love for Rose had helped create the future they now lived in. And Dawn, their impossible child, had become exactly what both worlds needed, not a weapon or a tool, but a teacher showing the way forward. "Mother," Dawn called, reaching for Rose's hand. "Father." She took James's hand too. It's time to show them the next step. Together, the family demonstrated what harmony between species truly meant. Their combined abilities created a display of power and beauty that left the council breathless. Light danced with thought, technology sang with life, and the boundaries between mind and matter blurred. "This is who we can all become," Dawn told the watching worlds. "Not through force or fear, but through choice and love." The Empire's ships now came in peace, bringing students instead of soldiers. Earth's technology reached new heights as both species shared their knowledge freely. And somewhere in the galaxy, other species watched and wondered as two former enemies showed them a new way forward. Rose looked at her daughter, remembering the day she had been sent to Earth as a useless gift. Now she understood. Sometimes the greatest gifts came disguised as mistakes. "Ready for tomorrow?" James asked their daughter. Dawn nodded, her pearl-like skin glowing with purpose. "Tomorrow and all the days after. We have so much more to learn together." Above them, the stars sparkled with promise, waiting for the united people Earth and the Empire had become. The bridge was built, the path was clear, and the future stretched out before them, bright with possibility. The new era had truly begun.